Hi there, folks, and welcome to another edition of Israel Explained. Biden trying to pick apart Netanyahu's coalition edition. We don't know if Biden's proposal is going to end the war, and that's what everyone's been focused on. There's developments with that too. But what I want to talk about is the other goal of his proposal, which is destabilizing Netanyahu's coalition, or at least reorganizing Netanyahu's coalition. The timing of the offer was very clearly related to Israeli domestic politics. It was just a few days away from when Gantz said he was going to leave the coalition unless they had a clear strategic outlook for the war. And one of his main concerns was that it didn't look to him like Israel was doing enough to get a hostage deal. But now that there's a concrete hostage deal on the table, it is much harder for Gantz to make that claim. By the way, Gantz is clearly uncomfortable with being used in this way, and that's something that hasn't really been covered enough. When asked to give a response to the Biden announcement, he gave no comment. Once he finally commented, he stopped short of embracing Biden's speech, and the reason is he feels that he might be compromised and seen as a tool of the Americans if he cooperates fully with their maneuver. I don't think Gantz likes this maneuver at all, which is intended to keep him in the coalition. Nonetheless, he is kind of trapped by this. He's not going to be able to leave if there's a serious movement towards a release of the hostages. So, what's happened now, and Biden has done this intentionally, is he's revealed that Netanyahu is taking positions that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich can't live with, forcing them to at least threaten to leave the coalition, and he's also forced Gantz to remain in the coalition. So he's made it a lot more likely than it was before that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich will be out of the coalition and Gantz will remain in, which of course suits the American interests of moving towards Saudi normalization, possibly even a two-state solution, and certainly ending this war and getting the hostages freed. So it's a strong play, but will it succeed? Netanyahu really doesn't want it to succeed. If Netanyahu got his way, Gantz would stay in the coalition, and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich would stay in the coalition. Gantz gives him a fig leaf before the world and lowers the intensity of the protests against his government, and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich guarantee his survival and protect his right flank. So he wants both. But keeping both has become increasingly difficult. But the way Netanyahu has maintained this coalition is basically through a lot of maneuvering and a lot of lying and a lot of manipulating. He created two cabinets. One is a small wartime cabinet, and the other is a wide cabinet. In the wartime cabinet, he tries to keep Gantz and Eisenkot satisfied, or at least keep them with enough influence so they don't leave. And he plays the more moderate leader there. And in the wider coalition, he plays the more extreme right wing leader and he tries to keep Ben-Gvir and Smotrich satisfied there. The trouble is, when Biden revealed this offer, he took the moderate version of Netanyahu, the one that agreed to the May 29th offer, and exposed it to the world, making sure that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have real difficulty remaining in the coalition. And now that the jig is up and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich know what Netanyahu has offered, they're threatening to leave. But what Netanyahu said to try to keep them in line is that the offer that he made includes a guarantee to destroy Hamas. But he hasn't been willing to show that to Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and Biden has basically said that that's not true. And a lot of sources in the Israeli Prime Minister's office have confirmed that. So Ben-Gvir said, quote, Mr. Prime Minister, what have you got to hide? If the deal is not reckless and it includes a clause on the destruction of Hamas, why won't you show it to me? The reason can only be one. This is a draft of a reckless proposal, as presented by Biden, and now you're trying to legitimize it. Meanwhile, Smotrich, called the wartime cabinet decision, quote, illegitimate and contrary to the law. He said they don't have the authority to make that decision. He also accused Netanyahu of hiding its content, saying, we don't know this proposal. I know a proposal from 2 weeks earlier saying opposite. So what Netanyahu is doing here is he's showing Smotrich and Ben-Gvir the offers that they're willing to accept, hiding from them the offers that they're not. It's a double game. It's a complicated one. It's starting to fall apart. Now, so Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have both said that if this deal moves ahead, they will leave. Meanwhile, the United Torah Judaism Party came out with a statement saying that delivering the hostages is the top priority, and they will support any hostage deal put forth by the government. Usually, they don't delve into these issues. That's not a position that we're surprised by, but the coming out with it publicly is a little bit surprising. And that may be because Netanyahu requested it to try to stabilize things. So right now, the coalition has four different threats to its existence, some of which have been created thanks to what Biden did, some of which have been exacerbated due to what Biden did, and some of which are unrelated. But all four interlock to create a real threat to the Netanyahu government. Threat number one, Gantz leaves. That is maybe the least existential threat because if Gantz leaves, he still has a coalition of 64. But there are two dangers to that. First danger is international. If you're left again with the Smotrich Ben-Gvir government, the ICC, the ICJ, the EU, also the Biden administration are going to have a lot more difficulty protecting the war effort, defending the war effort, arming Israel. It's going to lead to new levels of isolation, and Israel's already experiencing ones that it doesn't want to. But also, with the Israeli public, there's demonstrations against Netanyahu, and they're quite big. But the fact that Gantz is in the government is keeping a certain damper on it. Likud members think, and I agree, that if Gantz leaves, those demonstrations will become a lot bigger. Gantz will start to possibly lead them or support them. It'll lead to a lot more legitimacy because right now the protesters are working up against a sort of national unity government, and that makes them a little bit more marginal. Then, of course, you have the Ben-Gvir Smotrich threat, which we talked about. They're planning to leave. That would be existential. Um, the government wouldn't fall immediately if they left because Gantz would remain. And Lapid said he would provide the votes to pass the hostage deal. But once the hostage deal is over, Lapid will stop supporting. Gantz will probably stop supporting, and the coalition will fall. So that's a recipe for a very short-lived time for the government. Then there's the third threat, also existential, the Haredi parties. They want to leave not because of the hostage deal, but because of the issue with the draft law. The draft law is currently being reviewed by the Supreme Court. They'll have a decision in a few days. And it looks like they're going to decide that Haredi men have to serve in the army. There's currently no law regulating it. And the court is sick of temporary measures putting off a decision on this matter. Haredi parties aren't willing to serve in large numbers. Gallant is not willing to accept a law that leads them off. The Israeli public is not willing to accept anything that doesn't have Haredi men serving. So there's a real um, standoff here. And when the courts decide, and it looks like they will, since they're being very unsympathetic to the government position that Haredi men have to serve, parties might want to dissolve the government and then have elections and demand that a law, according to their choosing, be legislated by a new government. And that way hope to save their yeshiva boys from having to serve in the military. That is a very extreme threat to the government. Haredi parties have thrown over many governments in Israeli history, over a lot less than this law. The final threat, least serious so far, but with possible long-term ramifications, is a rebellion in the Likud. We all know about Yoav Gallant. Yoav Gallant has been rebelling against Netanyahu for many months now, and he has a few members of Knesset that support him, sort of. But there's a new front opening to his right in the Likud, led by Amichai Shikli, Minister for the Diaspora, Saadia Dan Iluz, also part of this coalition. It might widen to include others. They're criticizing Netanyahu from the right about his conduct of the war, being soft on terrorism, uh, bending over for Biden, as they call it, and um, also they think he's being soft with the Haredim on the Haredi deal. They think the Haredim should have to serve. Others not affiliated with either wing, like Nir Barkat, have also criticized his war strategy. The knives in the party are out. There's a sense that Netanyahu is weak. There's a sense that all these issues are in the coalition are insoluble, and he will eventually fall. So what is Netanyahu going to do? He's going to do what he always does. He's going to try to postpone a decision for as long as he possibly can, trying to keep Gallant in and trying to keep Ben-Gvir and Smotrich in by saying that he's advancing while winking to Ben-Gvir and Smotrich that he's not really advancing. I don't think that's a sustainable strategy anymore. And at some point, when he has to choose, and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are likely going to force him to choose, he will choose them over the deal, and he will blow up the deal. There are already signs of that. Netanyahu said in the Foreign Policy and Security Committee, quote, "I'm not willing to stop the war. I won't describe the deal details here, but the President of the United States said was inaccurate. Some details have not been revealed. After 16 days, there will be negotiations for 28 days, during which we will give the Israeli conditions for the continuation of the war or the talks." And a source in the war cabinet, almost definitely Gantz or Eisenkot, told Channel 12 News the following. The words Netanyahu spoke in the Foreign Policy and Security Committee that were leaked about the intention to renew fighting after Phase A are an invitation to Sinwar to blow up the deal. Returning to fighting after Phase A means giving up on the soldier hostages, the young men, and the bodies. End quote. So what Netanyahu is already trying to do is he's trying to get Hamas to blow up the deal. That will save him. That's his best way out of this. Get Hamas to blow up the deal. And if he can't do that, he will have to blow up the deal himself. Hamas so far isn't falling for this. According to the Al Akbar paper in Lebanon, Hamas said that they will only move forward if Israel give their complete offer, including a guarantee that they will stop the war, said with no equivocation, and that the United States will give guarantees that that will happen. Only if that happens will Hamas send a delegation to Cairo. So they're hoping that Netanyahu will be the one to blow this deal up and not them. That way they'll enjoy the benefits of PR. Netanyahu, if forced, will probably do that. Meanwhile, time is running out for the hostages. 4 hostages were declared dead today. They've been uh, apparently dead for quite a while. They were killed during the Israeli Operation Khan Yunis. We still don't know exactly the circumstance, but since they were alive in a propaganda video, it looks like the number is ever dwindling. It looks like the deal is likely to be a casualty of the crisis in the coalition, but the hostages are likely to be the most literal casualty if this deal does not go through. And even if the deal collapses, there's no real plan to win the war either. The only plan Netanyahu has is to try to save the coalition, and that's not going very well either. Okay, so I got a lot of comments on my last video. In fact, it was my most popular video ever, so thank you for that. But not too many questions, so I'll answer a couple questions I have here. How close is the military to cooing Bibi? This is a question from Modder15. A lot of the leadership is unhappy with him. What would it take for that to happen? Okay, so it's not happening now while there's talks about a hostage deal. There's no way that happens. When that might happen is if a hostage deal is passed up, the coalition remains with Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and they're put in the war cabinet, and Israeli isolation in the world increases. That's when rumbles of a coup might get more serious. I'm not saying it'll happen, but that's when I could see some potential for it happening. Harry Newhoff asks, I think Gantz is being short-sighted. If he leaves, Ben-Gvir will come in, and they won't approve any hostage deals. Do you agree? No, I don't. I think that if Netanyahu blows up this deal, which I think that he will, there's really no influence left for Gantz in this government. What he's doing by staying is he's providing a fig leaf for a government that's really driving Israel off a cliff. And by staying, he's allowing it to survive for longer. And by leaving, he makes it more likely to fall apart. So the best service he can give to the state of Israel if this deal fails, he should stay as long as there's a chance of the deal succeeding, is to leave the coalition and let Netanyahu implode. It's the best thing he can do for the country. Okay, if you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon at Shale Media. Thank you so much for all the people who've been supporting me so far. I'm really delighted with all of you. I didn't expect so much of a response. And also, if you are interested, check out my History of the Land of Israel podcast, where I just released an episode about the court of King David, discussing how David pursued Sheba, how um, Tamar was raped by her half brother, how Absalom rebelled against his father, all the family drama in the court. Did it really happen? What does it mean historically? And so on and so forth. I will see you here next time something exciting happens.